Greetings, welcome back. This is the quickie tour through the evolution of mass media. I've cited several articles and books on this, and you can get the reference. You can get those works cited in the reference list. And I'd like to start by quoting one of them. Wigner claimed that interactive digital technology would empower creative people. Wigner stated that the coming problem for tomorrow's media would be one of too much bandwidth and not enough content. And he wrote that just as the internet was beginning to take off in the very exciting days, the early days of the World Wide Web. Too much bandwidth, not enough content. Well, that was 1994. And now, well, we have reality TV, low production costs, lots of filler. And by the way, I love Man vs. Food. It's one of my favorite shows, reality TV shows anyway. Also, we have worldwide websites that take online payment from fans in exchange for downloadable content, books, music, so on and so forth. We have YouTube for posting full screen, high definition video. By the way, check out Epic Mealtime, an extremely over the top version of Man vs. Food. As you can tell, I like food. We also have news outlets out there that are allowing people to post on-the-scene video using only the camera that they have and the uploading capability that is built right into their mobile smartphones. So wow, we've really come a long way with media, and let's take a look at where it all began and how it evolved. So phase one, movable type. According to Jay Burke discussing the knowledge web, his alternative view of change called Connections, the advent of Johann Gutenberg's printing press was one of the most critical events in human history. Printing, first and foremost, made it easy to transmit information without personal content, revolutionizing the spread of knowledge. And Davison, Bolin, and Yu suggested that the 20th century was the age of mass media here in the United States. The authors cited the success of Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin as an early example. Uncle Tom's Cabin reached a sales figures of more than 1 million copies, and this compared to the typical 50,000 copies only a year after publishing in 1852. Davison et al. Stated that the first regularly published newspaper in the U.S. Did not begin until 1704. There were no daily newspapers until the 1780s, and most until the 19th century were no more than 4 pages, short in content, with small circulations. Newspapers in their contemporary form did not develop until the 1830s. The fledgling newspapers of the 19th century remained local in emphasis, and despite being linked via telegraph wires, they were all linked, but they still remained local in emphasis. It was, however, the magazine industry, noted the authors, that reached finally a national audience. Magazines began to emerge before the end of the 1800s, with Reader's Digest being the most widely read. Reader's Digest and from there stayed on top until TV Guide, a magazine tied to a newer, more visual medium, outpaced it. The incredible growth of the magazine industry in the 1920s and 30s was due in large part to the photographic medium, the pretty pictures that were contained in the slick magazines. So, phase two. Smile, you're on the silver screen, still and moving photography. Film, added the authors, came right on the heels of still photography. And before the turn of the century, short films simulating news events were shown to enthusiastic audiences. Film's appeal was, at first, strictly entertainment, and by the first decade of the 20th century, it was on its way to becoming what the authors call the most popular and influential medium of culture in the United States. Leading us to a newer medium, phase 3, Look Ma, No Wires, Radio, the Fifth Estate. According to the authors, Davidson et al., Reginald Aubrey Fessenden, a scientist at the Westinghouse Company, broadcast a recording of a woman singing as part of an experimental program in 1906. In 1909, ancestors of what later became radio stations were broadcasting their own programs. After World War I, stations began to multiply, and by the end of 1922, 690 stations had gone on air. In August 28th of 1922, a New York station owned by AT&T offered broadcasting's first paid commercial, noted the authors. Before the 20s were gone, programs were being named after their sponsors. Example, the Ever Ready Hour. In 1928, WMAQ in Chicago was reported to have won an estimated 40 million listeners, airing the classic Amos and Andy. This gave radio, according to Davidson et al., the status of a universal medium. Davidson et al. Stated, the 1930s and 40s were radio's great era in the United States. At that time, film grew and newspapers looked backward, but radio grew more emphatically during the hard times of the Depression. After World War II, radio was able to stay on top, but only briefly, because glowing color print media advertisements were beginning to promise the wonders of a new medium, one that would combine the sound of radio with the moving pictures of film. Radio was suddenly outstripped by its cousin, television, leading us to Phase 4. The medium is the message. King TV, your 15 minutes of fame coming right up. Would you like fries with that? According to the authors, Davidson et al., by the 1919, scientists knew that wireless transmissions of voice and moving pictures were possible. And the coming of World War II only delayed the inevitable, that television would become the dominant U.S. medium for mass communication. In 1950, only one broadcast dollar in 5 was going to television. 10 years later, it was 7 out of 10. Network radio lost almost 4/5 of its revenue before rallying in 1960. I wonder why. Can you say rock and roll, baby? T. Schwartz wrote in his book, Media, the Second God, that no one can escape the media. They reach all social environments instantly and continually. Schwartz went on to compare mass media to God. Godlike, the media can change the course of a war, bring down the president or king, elevate the lowly, and humiliate the proud by directing the attention of millions on the same event in the same manner. A quote from the book. McGuire's, Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Media, disagreed with Schwartz and his notion that media is powerful. McGuire challenged the people with vested interest in the powerful media argument to prove it. After an exhaustive search of articles and books dealing with the effects of media, the evidence, according to McGuire, seemed overwhelming that the effects of media were trivial. Yet, Schwartz, a veteran of 4 presidential campaigns, dozens of senatorial and gubernatorial campaigns, television and radio commercials for more than 300 major corporations, drew the simile of media and God. Schwartz stated that media was like God if God is understood as invisible, omniscient, and omnipotent. Schwartz added that, like God, media exists both outside people and within them. Further, media, like God, is always with people because it's everywhere, omnipresent. Finally, Schwartz stated that no one can ever understand media or God because they both work in mysterious ways. Later, in a study of what Ryan called the culture industry, he concluded that corporations in the business of manufacturing stars and styles develop marketing techniques attempting to control the cultural marketplace. McGuire concluded that although no proof exists for powerful media argument on one hand, empirical research is unsuitable for proving the not powerful hypothesis as well. Excuse me. Okay, what are the characteristics of media transformation as noted by the scholars that are cited here? Davidson et al. Observed that some common characteristics are present in each stage of media evolution, and they've noticed this since the Gutenberg press. A, the development of a cheaper, faster, simpler, more direct way to communicate. B, a popularization of communication materials successively demanding less participation of the consumer and broader an audience appeal. C, an expanding economic base demanding expenditure, whether it be from advertisers or consumers. D, an increasing privatization of consumption, the dramatically enlarged capacity of households to use mass media products. And finally, E, a layering of the new media atop its predecessors, sometimes altering the characteristics of preceding media, but never extinguishing them entirely. Davison et al.'s analysis was published in 1982, and at that time, the authors hinted that mass media evolution had reached its logical conclusion. The authors speculated as to whether television might be the final stage of mass media evolution. Don't! Phase 5. Open the pipes and say goodbye to big media as we know it. Again, Wigner's paper published in the sanguine early days of the World Wide Web claimed that interactive digital technology would empower creative people. Wigner stated that the challenge for media producers would be one of too much bandwidth and not enough content. Wigner predicted that once the vast expanse of channels and networks were opened, creative people, once held at bay by lack of access, would flock to the new media like settlers to the Oklahoma land rush. I'd say that's pretty much happening. At the same time, Levi accurately sensed where all this was leading. Levi wrote, "Empowerment and democratization would be inevitable features of the interactive digital future." And contrary to the view of critics, that power was not inherently corrupting. Levi stated that individuals or small groups could duplicate the efforts that previously could only be performed by large institutions or governments. Levi echoed a former CEO of Citicorp, Renston, who cited in Levi's work, said this: "The new technologies encourage participation and even dissent. As a result, the formerly dominant hierarchical models of authority were destined to fall. The Berlin Wall was only the first of these doomed dominoes." I'd say quite prophetic. Can you say U.S. Tea Party? Can you say Arab Spring? How about Occupy Wall Street? Anyone? Bueller? Anyway, that concludes our quickie tour through the evolution of mass media as observed by the scholars cited in this work, and you can see the works cited section of the page. Thank you for joining me. Hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.